Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to briefly run down our list of speakers that we have here and other guests from the city. We have with us today Mayor Bruce Rector. We have Vice Mayor Lena Teixeira. We have Councilmember Michael Menino, Councilmember Ryan Cotton. We also have City Manager Jennifer Poyer, as well as Chief Eric Gandy and Fire EMS Chief Tony Tedesco. And you're going to hear first from Chief Gandy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chief Eric Gandy of the Clearwater Police Department. We're here this afternoon to provide you some updates on last night's tragic boating crash. We're also here to clear up some misinformation that's been floating around online related to the crash. As most of you already know, one person died and 10 others were injured around 8:40 last night when a recreational boat slammed into the back of the Clearwater ferry. The ferry was filled with 45 passengers and crew and was on the way back from Clearwater Beach. Even before the first responders arrived on scene, we knew we were dealing with a major situation. Our 911 call takers could hear what they described as horrific screaming in the background. Dozens of police officers and firefighters rushed to the scene. Representatives of other agencies, including the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, FWC, and the Coast Guard were involved. It was a team effort in this tragic situation. Early on, the Clearwater Fire Department declared it a mass casualty event. Chief Tedesco will talk a little bit more about that later, but we had 1 fatality, 6 trauma alerts, and 10 total injuries. Victims were taken to hospitals in Clearwater, St. Pete, and even Tampa. Our thoughts go out to the families of those who were on board the ferry last night, particularly to the children and the family of the gentleman who died. It should also be noted that the efforts of a ferry crew member likely saved lives last night. I want to be clear about one thing. The ferry didn't strike a sandbar, as has been reported earlier. The ferry was struck from behind by a vessel that left the scene prior to the arrival of law enforcement. I'm going to play for you a video of the crash, and it will depict the point of impact. It's lengthy, but we're not going to show much of it. It's enough to suffice that we'll show a few seconds of this video that will give you some perspective on how this crash occurred. Go ahead and play that, please. So this image depicts the ferry traveling eastbound on the channel, the recreational vessel coming up behind. And there's the point of impact where it looks to be that overrode nearly 3/4 of the ferry. So that vessel left after the crash. Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies located about 3.5 miles south by the Bel Air Causeway. The operator and the passengers were on board that vessel. So FWC is handling the crash investigation. The United States Coast Guard is handling the administrative investigation involving a U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessel, which the ferry is. So Major Evan Lakowski is from FWC is here with us, along with the Clearwater Fire and Rescue EMS Chief Tony Tedesco. I'm going to turn it over to EMS Chief Tedesco first, and he can talk a little bit about what they encountered and his personnel encountered upon arriving at the scene and why they declared it a mass casualty event. Chief Tedesco.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Tedesco, Tony-Tedesco. I am the EMS Chief for the City of Clearwater and Acting Deputy Chief for the City of Clearwater Fire Rescue. Yesterday, we did respond to this mass casualty incident. And upon arrival, our crews were inundated with a great deal of victims and patients, all coming aboard basically the mouth of the Memorial Causeway Bridge. A great many patients. Now, what is a mass casualty? A mass casualty is when we have more victims than we do resources to be able to handle the victims that are on scene. And that's what we had. We actually entered into a level 1 mass casualty. We pulled as many ambulances and transport rescues as we possibly can. We ended up with, as Chief Gandy said, 10 patients when it was all said and done. We had a multitude of other patients as well that were thankfully uninjured. We did have one deceased that was aboard the Coast Guard boat. And so our top priority in situations like that are obviously we needed to find very quickly the most injured, of which, like what we said, we took many who were what we call trauma alerts. They were sent to trauma facilities via 2 helicopters, an ambulance, and also a critical care transport unit. And again, when we're looking at that kind of an incident, we're looking for our most critical. And it was a little bit challenging because we had great Good Samaritans who were bringing people in. So you can imagine being on scene with only a few personnel and being inundated with probably 30, 40 people at a time coming towards you at all ends of that basin on all different boats as people were being, taken by Good Samaritan boats, and us having to have to sift through that. Definitely a challenge. We overcame, and we did what we needed to do. And so there you have it.
So next up, Major Laskowski from FWC. He could speak to the crash investigation and give you kind of some perspective on how they go about conducting these investigations. Certainly, it's early on in this. A lot of witnesses, a lot of information to sift through. Clearwater PD is providing a support role, obtaining evidence, obtaining videos, identifying witnesses and potential witnesses. So we've worked well and collaborated together on many things over the years since we implemented a Marine unit. But I think it's important for you to hear from them on everything that they have to do to conduct one of these investigations. It's much different than a garden variety crash on a surface street. Major.
Thank you, Chief. Major Evan Laskowski with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and that's EVANLASKOWSKI. So last night we responded
at the same time. So you get a lot of factors in there, and that can lead to injury and everything else in between. So if that answers your question, again, we'll put out all those names specifically. That's sort of the investigation as a whole.
The boat captain was cooperative, but my understanding is at the scene that several witnesses told me that you declined a field sobriety test or a breathalyzer. Is that accurate?
So that is not accurate. So the captain voluntarily submitted to a breathalyzer, and there was no alcohol determined in that breathalyzer sample. It read 000 based on the certified breath test that was given to the oxidizer.
Is anyone in custody?
No one's currently in custody at this time.
Can you confirm someone on that recreational boat called 911 and did it remain at the scene for some time?
So we're still working through the volume of 911 calls that came through, which boats they were in. The call takers here at Clearwater did a fantastic job, but we're obviously under a large amount of duress with the number of people, the volume of noise that was going on in the background. So I can't state exactly which vessels made which phone calls.
So would it be considered a hit and run then, or would it escape? Is it considered a hit and run, or what is it considered? What do you guys consider?
So we're currently working with the state attorney's office to make sure that we fit whatever legal definitions for hit and run should or shouldn't be based on the circumstances that persisted that evening.
There was another scene at Seminole Boat Ramp where another individual was detained. Was that related? And if so, how?
I'm not aware of anyone being detained at Seminole Boat Ramp. I know Seminole Boat Ramp was the staging point for all the EMS units, and the large majority of the patients were brought there, triage, and the chief could speak to that as how they triage them. But I don't know of anyone being detained at that boat ramp, at least from our standpoint. And if Clearwater detained anyone there, they could speak to that.
County Sheriff's Office did, and I believe I saw one of the boat folks on scene.
Yeah, so the only investigative efforts we took in terms of that was at the Bel Air boat ramp, as we discussed. We assisted the PD and the fire department at Seminole with the victims that were there.
Sorry, have you seen, I know Chief Gandy said that the boat overrode the ferry about 3/4 of the way. Have you seen something like this happen before? Can you talk about severity?
Unfortunately, these accidents happen all over the state. This isn't the first. I hope it's the last. I don't know that it will be, but unfortunately, they do occur. I saw the damage to both vessels extensively last night, and that video depicts it very accurately. There was definitely a point where both those boats were fully entangled, and a large amount of damage resulted to the ferry boat as a result of that entanglement.
Are you able to say the ages of the victims? Was there any children involved in this injury, adults? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
So all the victims that we had identified were all adults. I believe there were some children on the vessel itself. Like I said, we'll release that full list. That way we need to read out all those names, but we'll release that full list to you guys today via RPIF.
Did any of the victims fall in the water, and how deep is that water?
I'm not sure if anyone went overboard. Again, it's a dynamic case with how many people were on the vessel itself. Everyone other than the one was able to survive the incident itself. I know some people also got themselves off the boat. Once the crash occurred, the vessel ended up in some shallower water there on the sandbar, which I think is where that story was coming from for that vessel being aground. It did end up aground themselves off the boat in pretty shallow water, watching either SAMs that were able to take them away or responding vessels that were able to get them back to shore safely.
Any
One witness
estimate
would
of
be
how
that, one
fast?
witness towards the sandbar. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. Again, the chief talked about the longer version of this video. There's many more minutes that we're going to diagnose in there to try and figure out what was going on. And back to the question about 911 calls, we're going to try and build that timeline back and see who was making what phone calls at what time. And again, that's the complexity of an event of this magnitude, as well as when it involves boats like this. Again, every piece of evidence tries to float away. We're dealing with a late night, and again, a lot of people to deal with.
But bottom line, if you hit a boat, if you call 911, you should remain until law enforcement. Should you ever leave before law enforcement arrives? Or?
We would always recommend that if someone's involved in an accident, you remain on scene, you render aid that you can, you call all the local authorities that you can, and do everything you can in that moment. And we're committed. If a hit and run occurred here and people were injured, people were heavily influenced by this event, we're committed to working those charges all the way through. Again, we've already engaged in discussions. We have a strong working relationship with the Pinellas County State Attorney's Office, and we're working through whatever those charges may be.
What if I told you that you can learn everything in just 5 days for 100% free, and you can do it with the camera that's always in your pocket?
The recreational boat was moving at the time of the crash.
So difficult to make speed estimates. Cameras are a challenge there as well. So we'll work through that once we do our crash investigation. We actually can use kind of the way the fiberglass breaks and the way that things kind of come together, similar to what's done on the road. And we'll get the speed. It's just hard to make that estimate now. You can see for that video and make your own estimate, but we'll get a good number once our investigations.
Do you know how fast that Wakestone area is? Is that a Wakestone area?
So where they were in currently would have been no restriction on speed other than safe operation, but there's no slow speed or minimum wake applied to that area. They were quickly approaching one, but where they were was not slow speed or minimum wake.
Can you at least release the name of the operator of the blue and white vessel that we saw and all that else?
Yes, we'll release all of that. Like I said, I'd rather just let all that go out as one big piece from RPIF.
Just to clarify, is it correct to say that the boat did not stay at the crash scene, but it's not determined yet whether it's being investigated as an actual hit and run?
It is safe to say that, yeah. There's evidence that shows that the vessel did remain there for a period of time and then ultimately ended up at the Bel Air boat ramp, separate from the accident location. That is an accurate description of what occurred.
Question for Chief Tedesco. I think when you talk about mass casualty events and how you guys handle them, can you just speak to a little bit what the FWC was talking about, but can you just speak to the difficulty in responding to these situations when you're dealing with nighttime, you're not even on the ground, you're in the water, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. When our crews first arrived, they found themselves in the water themselves, trying to rescue people out of the water as well. On top of that, they were trying to figure out who was the most wounded. On top of that, we had an incident command system that was put into place by the district commander. Very well done. But we were trying to get as many resources as we could to this scene. There were many other calls going on at the county at the same time, quite truthfully. And we were basically robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way, trying to get as many resources as we could to our scene. That includes fire department rescues, fire engines, trucks. That includes Sunstar ambulances. We even, like I said, even had critical care transport come, and we called for as many helicopters as we could. And so they were faced with a very challenging job in the nighttime, in the water, trying to figure out who are our most injured and where are you coming from and what boat are you associated with, if that makes any sense, as we're trying to put the information together ourselves through whatever dispatch information that we have. Hopefully that makes sense.
What kind of injuries were treated last night?
We had multiple folks with broken bones, a lot of orthopedic injuries, great deal of soft tissue injuries. You did have some head injuries, and of course, we had the deceased as well.
Can you describe that area when it comes to boat traffic? Is it typically very busy? And then also, can you talk to us about, is it normal for the ferry to have that many people on it on Sunday night?
I can speak to that a little bit. That's an exceptionally busy area. It's an intersection between the egress point from Clearwater Marina, where all the commercial operations occur, and the Intercoastal Waterway. So it's exceptionally busy, and as was mentioned earlier, it becomes an idle zone once you move out into the ICW. In terms of ferry capacities and all those things, that's an answer for the, or a question for the Coast Guard. They evaluate all that. It is an inspected vessel. So they have to go through all those things and make those determinations. That'll all be part of the broader investigation, obviously. And that's really all we have time for today. What I will tell you and close with is that Chief Tedesco mentioned it, but it's exceptionally difficult. It's outstanding that so many separate entities and Good Samaritans come together to help, but communication becomes challenging when one victim is in a Coast Guard vessel, one is in a sheriff's vessel, one's in Clearwater Police vessel, 4 have walked to shore. We have family members showing up in vehicles. So I think in any kind of an event like this, that's probably the biggest challenge is coordinating your resources. And as Chief Tedesco mentioned, we try and establish a unified command early so that we can share those communication efforts and understand the big picture. Now, what changed with this a little bit is the other vessel is 3.5 miles away in another jurisdiction. So it complicates things immensely. So a lot of times, when we see you guys out in the field right after one of these things has occurred, it's exceptionally difficult to get our arms around it initially. And we're really focused on the well-being of our victims and making sure we preserve evidence. So thank you very much for coming.
The second from the FWC, sir, can you say and spell your first and last?
First name Matthew, Matthew, last name Dallarosa, Dallarosa.
Thank you.
And then the person that was killed, did he was on the ferry boat?
Yeah.
The person that was killed on the ferry boat?
Yes, the person who died was on the ferry boat. In terms of the investigation, they'll determine location